Welcome to the Savvy Dentist podcast with Dr. Jesse Green, the show where great dentistry meets great business. Listen in each week as we bring you an inspiring person who will share their story, ideas and business techniques to help you create a practice and a life you love. And now introducing your host, Dr. Jesse Green.
Hi everyone, it's Jesse Green. Welcome back to SavvyDentist.com and to the Savvy Dentist podcast. It is terrific to have your company for another episode of the show. Now, if you're a motivated practice owner and you're looking to get more from your dental practice, whether it's earning more income, having more free time, or even just increasing your enjoyment and satisfaction around owning the practice, I want to invite you to come and find the Savvy Dentist Facebook group and come and join us there. It's a group that's been dedicated especially to help practice owners get more from their practice. As I say, whether it's earning more money, having more free time, or just increasing the fulfillment and satisfaction that comes from owning the practice. In the group, you'll find there's plenty of resources, tools, conversations that's going to help you on your own journey to success, whatever that means for you. So all you need to do is head across to Facebook, find the search bar, type in Savvy Dentist, and you'll see the group there. It'll take a moment or two to answer the membership questions. And once you've done that, we look forward to inviting you into the group so you can get more from your practice and earn more money, have more free time, and enjoy that journey that bit more. So go ahead, do that. It's as easy as 1, 2, 3, and you can do that in a couple of moments. So we look forward to seeing you there. Now, my guest today is Cam Colkoen, and Cam is a remarkable human being. He's achieved so much in so many different elements of his life. He's an internationally known speaker, speaking all around the world to large companies like Toyota and many others. He's climbed Mount Kilimanjaro and is also a world-renowned athlete. He's competed on the world stage in lots of athletics tournaments. And so all those achievements are fantastic in their own right. But what's really interesting is as a young boy, Cam was told that he would always need someone to help him live independently because Cam was born with cerebral palsy. And what Cam did is he thought, well, that's not how I see myself. I see myself as going on to create connection and entertaining people and inspiring to people to live their best life. And he's done that in his own life. So he's been able to achieve all of those things and didn't accept the limitations that other people put on him. And what I really enjoyed about our conversation with Cam is his warmth, his connection, his generosity, and his humor, his good grace. And in our conversation, he shares a bunch of things that are going to be helpful for anyone wanting to get the best out of their life. You know, things like the power of dreaming, the ability to picture things in our mind's eye and really go for it and commit to it. And he talks about in detail, he talks about his favorite word, which is around being awesome, and not just in the throwaway, cheesy way that we see it being used in lots of language. He unpacks it and describes why it's so important for him and what it might mean for you as well. And here's the thing is no matter what you do in life, no matter where you go in life, at some point or another, we're all going to encounter some form of adversity. And what Cam shows us is how to take that adversity and turn it into an incredible competitive advantage. I really enjoyed this conversation with Cam. He's a really warm, interesting, engaging human being, one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet. I really loved doing this interview. So I hope you get plenty out of it. You're going to want to have a pen and paper handy because there's plenty of pearls of wisdom. And if you want more pearls of wisdom, head across to his website, which is camcalkoen.com, and that's spelled CAMCALKOEN.com. And at the website, you'll see speeches, you'll see podcasts, you'll see articles to read, and a whole bunch of stuff there that I know you're just going to love and enjoy. So without any further ado, here's our conversation with Cam. Cam Colkoen, welcome to the Savvy Dentist podcast all the way from Auckland. It is fantastic to have you here, mate. Thank you for joining us. How's things in Auckland?
Oh, Jesse, thank you so much for having me here. It's a great day in Auckland. It's getting a little bit chilly, but hey, after the last 2 years we've had, every day is a good day.
Mate, 100%. I'm in Canberra and it's getting chilly here. And when we were talking off air, I was telling you that I've got a bit of man flu at the moment, and which, snotty nose and all the rest of it. And you were telling me that you had to do a whole presentation up on stage under lights, with a head cold and stuffy sinuses and snotty nose. I've just got to ask you, as a speaker, professional speaker, that's got to be a hard day at the office.
Hey, well, it was even harder because this was my very first speech, Jesse. So I was an athlete at the time and I'd done some cool stuff. And my manager rang me up and I was overseas. And he said, Cam, when you get back to New Zealand, would you do me a favour? would you come and speak at a school? And I was like, no way, man. I'm terrified of public speaking, you know. They say more people are scared of speaking than they are of dying. And I was that guy. I was double that guy because I talk funny, but you've got to embrace opportunities. And between saying yes and giving the speech, I had got an awful cold, and I'm doing everything I can to get better because I'm nervous as heck about giving the speech, but I've committed to it. I want to do it. I get halfway through the speech. It's all going good, and I feel a massive sneeze coming on.
Oh, God.
And I'm doing all I can, Jesse, to keep speaking and not sneeze, which is quite difficult, not very pretty, and in my case, impossible. And all of a sudden, you see, my nose exploded.
So
snot everywhere. My handkerchief not in my pocket, and the girls, they just didn't know whether to laugh or to cry. It was a girls' school, and I was fresh out of school myself. I thought that was going to be a great opportunity to meet someone, and there I am with just snot all over my face.
Oh, that's it's really funny when it's not you. So I love that story because I did a talk last week and I was feeling a bit that way, but I didn't have that experience, thank goodness. Now Cam, I want to talk a bit. You mentioned in your introduction, you said I talk funny, and you don't talk funny. You got an accent, right? And so I wanted to start with your story. You were born with cerebral palsy, and I wanted to talk a little bit about that because one of the things that I've always admired about you and your work, and I have been aware of your work now for quite a while, but what I've always really admired about you is your ability to reframe things as an opportunity. You were told as a little tacker, as a kid, that, you know, you've got cerebral palsy, you're always going to be dependent on someone else to help you through life. But you said within yourself, that's not me, that I don't need that. I'm going to do my own thing. Thank you very much. So I wanted to ask you a little bit about that, you know, start to life, what the thought process was and how you reframe that to take what some people perceive as an adversity and turn that into an opportunity.
Hey, and Jesse, it gives me goosebumps to know that someone in another country knows about my story, because in a way, that was my motivation. So ever since I was a kid, I would dream, and I dream big, and I dream about a life where I could travel, where I could entertain and connect with a lot of people. And I was told that I was forever dependent on others because of that cerebral palsy. But I always had that big dream, and I always let that dream be my guiding light. And so when I was at primary school and I was a different kid, I knew I was different, and I didn't want to be bullied. I didn't want to be picked on. So I'd step outside my comfort zone and into the comfort zone of others. And I'd say, hey, dude, I can't skateboard because my balance isn't as good as yours. You know, I'd give people a compliment. I'd make them feel good. But I have my scooter, and with my scooter, I can go wherever you go. And then we were able to focus on what was really important. It was connection. It was humor. It was people. And so I knew I could either sit down and I could watch all my dreams pass me by, or I could get up and I could chase them. And so instead of lying about the way I walk, I decided to be inspired by great athletes. And that being inspired by an athlete gave me reason, gave me motivation to do things like physio. Instead of lying about the way I talk and seeing my speech as an impediment, I decided to see it as an accent and be inspired by the greatest speakers in the world. And I guess I've always been inspired by success. And that's what gave me the choice to go, well, if I'm inspired by success, what am I going to do to achieve my own success?
Mate, there's a whole lot of things in that to unpack. And I want to start with dreaming, because you said you had a dream. Yeah, you dreamt big dreams. And it's really interesting because when I was a kid, I dreamt a lot too. I was one of those kids. I'd lie awake at night in my bed, and in my mind's eye, I'd picture all these things I was doing. I'd picture the adventures I was having around the world. But what I've come to understand and learn is not everyone does that, right? And I think my mother gave me that gift. I don't know where that gift came from you. So I'm curious to ask you, where did you learn to dream, or how did you learn to dream? And I guess one of the things I want to ask is, why do you think some people have lost that ability to dream, and how do we get it back for them? Because I think that's where great inspiration comes from.
Yeah, and I think that everyone actually has a dream, but what happens is we let our perceived realities get in the way, right? We start to think that we're too old, or we're too young, or we don't have enough money, or we don't have enough time, or we don't have the right resources, and we start looking for ways in order for us not to be all that we can be, rather than focusing on what we can be. And some of our challenges are pretty real, right? But so is having a speech impediment and a physical impediment. So it comes to where you put that energy. And for me, as a kid, dreaming was a way of getting through tough times. And some of these tough times were as simple as sitting in this assembly on a wooden floor and being really uncomfortable. And I'd imagine myself being a fighter jet, and I never saw any reason why that couldn't be my reality. And then as a teenager, I did get into a bit of a gnarly cycle. I mean, it's pretty tough being a teenager at the best of times, and when you throw in a spice of cerebral palsy, it just gets a little bit more crazy, right?
Yeah.
And I got into some really dark times, and it was in those dark times where I said, Cam, if you give up now, you're never going to know if you're going to be able to travel, to entertain, and to connect. And to give up on that dream seemed like the biggest disappointment. And so I didn't know how I was going to travel. I didn't know how I was going to entertain. I didn't know how I was going to connect. But what I would do is I'd stay open to the opportunities that would enable one of those three things, if not three, all of them. So with my athletics, I knew I could travel. I knew it was entertaining. With my speaking, I knew I could travel. I knew I could entertain. I knew I would connect with people. And so with our dreams, whether it's what we want to be or what we want to do, I wouldn't get too caught up on that. Some people say, I want to be an athlete, I want to be a doctor, I want to be a speaker. And that's all cool, but what happens when things don't go to plan, right?
Yeah.
Or you have an injury, or you have a failure. Whereas if you say, I want to do these things, I want to travel, I want to be rich, I want to have family, whatever those things are, then you start using those to go, okay, what are my opportunities to get a step closer to those things? What I want to do.
So that's a really interesting thing. You said, you use your dream to be open to the opportunities. And of course, one of the things that I've experienced in my life, and I think others probably have too, is sometimes I think it's Tony Robbins that talks about it. It calls it the tyranny of how. Yeah, we're getting caught up on how I'm going to do this, and if I don't see the how immediately, kind of giving away the dream itself. But I think what you've articulated really well is just kind of letting the dream be there, and as the opportunities invariably present themselves, just kind of saying yes to as many things as possible that seem like they might at least be a step in, or even half a step in the right direction towards that outcome. Is that kind of it?
Yeah. So my athletics, for example, I'm at high school and my friends suggested I put my name down for the school athletics day. And inside my head was a little voice saying, what will people think? What may they say? And about my best mates, just do it, right? Don't focus on anything else, and often we overcomplicate things. We start overthinking, so just do it. That's all I had to do. I ran that race. I didn't win that race. I didn't come second, third, fourth. I came last by a long way, but I enjoyed that feeling of flying down the track. And so the next day, I started training as if I was a full-time professional athlete. I started, going straight to the best coach in the club and saying, I want to train with you. and almost fake it until you make it. You know, I keep things pretty simple, but I do not give up on the dream. And I'm quick to see that if I do well here, it's going to get me closer.
Do you think that those wins kind of stack one upon the other as well? Because do you think like having the first race that you did and the success that you had with that, maybe it wasn't coming first, second, third or fourth, as you said, you come last, but getting onto the track was the win, right? Do you think that those wins in one area of your life have helped you succeed in other areas of your life, or have given you the strength, the opportunity, or indeed just the drive to explore other areas as well? What I'm asking is whether that's transferable.
Absolutely. So when I had to give that first speech and I was terrified as heck of speaking, I took my training mentality into creating that speech. So I knew that if I practiced my speech, if I could be as articulate as I could, if I could study my audience, if I could put in the same amount of hours, 27, 28 hours that I put into my training, if I put that into my speech, I would have a lot less to worry about. And so I just used that to become the best speaker that I could be, and eventually speak all over the world and build it into a business and win awards as a speaker. So absolutely, I see things correspond, and I see those dreams as being so important, because in those dark days, I did have people saying, "Hey, Cam, you're going to be okay. Hey, Cam, here's some inspiration, here's some motivation." But if you haven't got that dream, how do you take that inspiration? How do you take that motivation? If you don't know where you're going in life, it doesn't matter, or what you want to achieve in life. It doesn't matter how positive someone may be. You've got to be able to connect that inspiration to where you want to be, to where you want to go. But yes, don't worry about the how. Trust your process. Trust the process of people who have gone before you. Jack Ma, one of the wealthiest people in the world, set up Alibaba, didn't know anything about tech, and now has the most successful tech company in the world.
Yeah, fantastic.
He had a dream.
He did have a dream. In your literature and on your website, I guess this is what we're referring to as being opportunity focused as well. Opportunity centric is the language that I think you use. And I kind of like that, because to me, it's almost like we're scanning the environment for opportunities to advance our dream. And I wanted to ask you about the mindset that comes with being opportunity focused or opportunity centric. How do you go about determining, because you've obviously got lots of opportunities that come across your path. How do you evaluate each opportunity and go, is this taking me a step closer to my dream, or is this a bit of a distraction? I'm curious, because one of the things that the guys and girls listening to this podcast often encounter is opportunity overload. And there's sometimes like, which one? Which path do I choose?
So for me, with the opportunities are the reasons for saying yes.
Yeah.
Better than the perceptions for saying no.
Yep.
And just as simple as that. If I say yes to this, and my perceptions for saying yes, those are the things that are going to light me up. Those are the things that are going to excite me.
Yeah.
And then but if we focus on the perceptions for saying no, if I had said I wanted to be an athlete and a speaker, I would have been focusing on all the reasons why I couldn't be an athlete and a speaker. When I started saying I want to travel, entertain, and connect, and those opportunities to be a speaker or to be an athlete came into my life, that's what I would connect those opportunities to. So that's where having that, what do you want to do in life, that's where those almost become those kind of the guiding stars of what you say yes to.
So I want to just shift gear for a second, Cam, and talk about your athletics career. What is it about athletics that you love most? What is it? Is it the activity itself? Is it the competition? Is it testing yourself? What do you love about sports and athletics?
Yeah, that's an awesome question. I've never actually been asked what I loved about it. I've been asked what it felt like to win championships all over the world. What does it feel like to be doing something that you never thought you'd be able to do? What I love about athletics is that it was a result of doing something incredibly scary and it creating a career for me. It made me stronger. It made me stronger more mentally. It gave me stronger physically. It made me stronger socially. And it really taught me that if I want to achieve something, all I need to do is create a process. And I don't need to achieve it by myself. I achieve it with a coach. I achieve it with a training squad. I achieve it with a nutritionist. And my mum and dad, and it's a bit of a famous quote, but you can be whatever you want to be in this world. You don't necessarily know how you're going to get there. What you need is the right people on the right seats on the right bus. That's what we did. And that's what I loved about athletics. And I loved that I could travel the world. I loved that it entertained people. And I loved that there was a form of connection by connecting with my training buddies.
Athletics is sometimes perceived as a solo sport. Whether you're doing track or field, it's often perceived as a solo sport primarily. But connection is something that has flowed through all of your work. I've read so much on your website, and the word connection, I'd be really interested to see how often that word comes up on your website, because it's obviously something that's really important to you. And you've mentioned it in your athletics career as well, the connection with your team, your training team, with your coach, your nutritionist, your whole support squad. So I wanted to ask you why you think connection is so important, because at a superficial level, I get it. We're all on this planet together. We don't want to be a single cork bobbing along on the ocean. Why do you think it's just so important? What is it that you think drives us all for connection? Connection
is the greatest opportunity that we have. Connection is what makes you realize that you can be an athlete. What makes you realize that you can be a speaker is what makes you realize that you can do whatever you want to do in this world. Connection, we are connecting with stuff every day, but often and sometimes we're connecting with the stuff we don't want to be connecting with, right? We're connecting with that bad attitude. We're connecting with the news that we don't want to be hearing. We're connecting with the doom and gloom. So connecting with the things that make you feel good, that is what leads to be dreaming bigger and achieving more than you ever thought possible. Like if you tried to do everything alone, it would be a pretty lonely place.
I've found for me in my life, Cam, the thing that brings me most happiness is the connection piece. The thing that, like you and I connecting now, my whole why in my world is how can I connect with some interesting people and how can I have interesting conversations and form those relationships. And I wanted to ask you about important relationships in your life and the people who have connected really deeply with you and the people who have made a big difference in your life. And maybe there's some people that have made a bigger difference than others in your life. But I'm curious to ask what those connections gave you specifically and what they mean to you in terms of the things you've been able to do in your life. Where does that connection piece fit in for you personally?
Yeah, so one of the earliest memories of connection is my high school principal when he said to me, Cam, what can you do for my school? And as a teenager, I was like, dude, what do you mean? What can I do for your school? This is your school. Aren't you going to teach me? And then I realized he had the biggest school in New Zealand, 2,500 students at the time. He wanted it to be the biggest success that it could be. And therefore he needed staff and students who see the world as theirs, who are prepared to embrace opportunity because you really get back what you put out. And so that's when school shifted from a place where I do geology and math and science and social studies to a place where on Monday I could be a geologist, a scientist, a mathematician. And again, it was through that connection of going, how do I embrace what this guy's given me by saying, what can I do for your school? How can I how can I best represent that? I had a guy when I was in the dark days of my life who did write me a letter and said, Cam, difference is a good thing. The people who count in this world look for those who are different. So I embraced that, and I started celebrating difference. And difference isn't the way we walk or talk or look. Difference is the way in which we think. Difference is the way in which we see the world, Yeah. Difference is, being able to see opportunities and a reason for living life that other people do not see or are too afraid to see.
Here in Australia, and I assume in New Zealand as well, what we're seeing at the moment is some people are starting to feel a little bit anxious about some things, whether it's rising inflation. This is primarily a business podcast, but so people are a bit worried about cost of living, rising inflation, things happening out in the world. We've just come through a pandemic, and then there's all this other stuff to come through. So I wanted to ask you about that, because one of your blog posts you talk about staying brave, and I wanted to ask you, firstly, what did the pandemic teach you when it comes to connection? And then secondarily, staying brave when life throws you a curveball. You kind of go, I've just come through this pandemic and now there's this next thing, right? And it might not even be a thing. It might be a fear that we're imagining in our mind. But I wanted to ask you to look back to the pandemic, but also to look forward to giving people the most opportunity-centric mindset to focus as they embrace the next 6, 12, 24 months.
I think to answer the latter part of that question first, I think the awesome and the opportunity that the pandemic gave us is an opportunity to reflect and go, how do we use this 2.5-year period in order to enhance our life going forward? So it's been really, a lot of us have had to continually innovate who we are and what we do, because the rules around who we are have been changing weekly, monthly, daily in some cases, right? And so we've had to adapt to doing things online or, but how do we learn from this experience and not just go, okay, we survived the pandemic. How does that enhance our life going forward? So before moving and before the pandemic, I was all set to move up to Los Angeles and become a full-time speaker up there. And I thought that's how I had to do it. What I realized, when you can't travel for 2.5 years, all of a sudden a 12-hour flight isn't very long, isn't much, right?
Yeah.
And so can I be going up there for a couple months at a time, do the hard graft that I will have to do, no one knows who I am. But rather than watching my money run out, I can then come back to New Zealand and Australia, do a whole bunch of speakers, top up the kitty, top up the bank account, and go back into America, go back into building the dream that way. And eventually opportunities are going to show up where I'll start spending more time there than I'm spending here. 2 days before the biggest lockdown we had in New Zealand, I bought my first and only house.
Oh, well done.
Which was awesome, right? And then 2 days later, we went into the lockdown, and every single job I had going forward, boom, disappeared.
Oh, yeah, wow.
My life savings is now tied up in a house, right?
Yep.
And so I'm freaking out. Like, I've now got this massive mortgage. I haven't got any money coming in. Every job for the foreseeable future has been cancelled. What am I going to do? And so what's the one thing I've got? My dream.
Yep.
Travel, entertain, connect. So what does travel look like when I can't jump on a plane? Well, my voice can still travel, and there's millions of podcasts out there. Who can I get a podcast with, right? Entertainment. I can't get on a stage with a group of people anymore, but we've got YouTube. So what can I be putting out onto YouTube? And with connecting, how do I connect when I can't go up and shake your hand? Well, what I can do is I can reconnect with every single person that has been part of a journey. right? Checking in with them. How are you doing? How are you feeling? How are all my clients from the year before? What are they feeling right now? And you know what's happening now because of that stuff is that all those clients are the ones coming back to me saying, hey, Cam, we've got an event in a month, 2 months, 6 months' time. Can you be a part of that?
Yeah, wow.
I rang up the bank manager. I said, because I looked up the speakers who were doing really well in the pandemic. I was like, hey, what have they got? And they've got a home studio set up, right? And so I started looking into that home studio and I'm like, I'd love that, but I need 15 grand to do that, right? Yeah. And at the moment, I haven't got anything. The bank manager's saying, don't spend any more money.
Yep.
But I believed in my dream enough that I was like, stuff it, I'm going to go out and I'm going to get that equipment that I need. And for the rest of that pandemic, I had the money coming in, but I needed to pay the mortgage. But it was really scary to do that. And that's why I'm so caught up on this word awesome. I use it a lot. And it's not because it's not the same as cool, gnarly, you know. And a lot of people say, oh, awesome, it's overused and it's weakened and all this. But if you break down awesome is awe, right? So awe is always going to be the stuff that gets your knees shaking, your butterflies flying, that feels a little bit scary, that feels a little bit uncomfortable. But when we get to the other side of that, you feel awesome. And so that's why don't underestimate awesome. Don't underestimate those things in life that feel a little bit scary and just believe in it. Believe in you. Believe in your dream.
Hey, mate, that really is, you know, without wanting to sound trite, that really is awesome because you've actually preempted a question I wanted to ask you, which is why the word awesome is so important too as well. You've eloquently explain that. And what I want to ask you on that theme is what are the things that excite you most? I know travel, connection, entertainment are the 3 pillars of that dream of yours. And obviously we've got that nailed down. But I'd like to just know what are the things that excite you and what is it that makes you have the knees tremble and the butterflies start to fly around in your tummy? Because when I look at you, and I know others have said this to me as well, they go, holy heck, you know, fantastic speaker, really accomplished guy, done X, Y, Z, you know. And so from the outside looking in, it's easy to think Cam would never get butterflies, you know. He's got it all together. Right? What's he got to be there?
Every single day, man. Yeah. Every single day.
Yeah, right. Like the rest of us, right? So yeah. I'm curious to ask you, what are the things that make your butterflies get going?
Oh, every single time I'm speaking in front of an audience, they get going, right?
Yeah.
Because it's that thing of you step into an audience and no one really knows who you are or what to expect, right?
Yeah.
But if you start looking at, and again, connection is going to come up. Yesterday, I had a room of 100 women and 1 man. They were all in their, you know, late 30s to 60s, and it was the last presentation of the day. And you just step in there and you go, I just want to connect with these people. I want to make them laugh. I want to light them up. I want to take them on a journey and on a roller coaster. And so I love that. That's why I go in. I love building a business, Jesse, if I'm perfectly honest. Like, it's great to have this passion. But I also love, you know, my grandmother goes, oh, bless you, speaker, you know, oh, bless. Or like people say, oh, what are you doing? You know, if I don't know who I am and I say, oh, I'm a speaker, and they go, oh, that's cute. You know, how many speeches do you do in a year? They'll say. And I'll say, oh, I do about 3 or 4 a week. And then they started going, oh, okay, yeah, and I just bought a house. Oh, I think you could easily see that speech has been your biggest weakness, right?
Yeah.
And so, it's not if I can do it, you can do it, but it's what are those things that light you up? How are you overcomplicating stuff? And are you just saying yes to the things that excite you? So I climbed Mount Kilimanjaro in 2019.
Yeah.
Hadn't done walking. It wasn't something that I enjoyed. I actually didn't do any training. I did a couple of short walks before we did it. But it was the people that got me up there. It was saying yes to something that I had never said yes to before.
I've got a particular podcast listener who is preparing for Mount Kilimanjaro, and the fact that he's training and he's just heard you say you walked up without training, other than a couple of short walks, I think he's going to be giving you a call after this going, hey, don't tell me all my training.
You know, I mean, I'm not saying don't train.
I know you're not saying. I was just being silly.
That's not what I'm saying, but it was all those things that could have got in the way of getting up there, right?
Yeah.
So 2019 was the busiest year I ever had as a speaker, and I could have not done any of it. I could have gone, that's going to take out a big chunk of money, the fact that I'm gone for, 10 days. But I'm so glad I did it, Jesse, because what I got from that experience was for this listener, it was the greatest personal development I've ever done. It was, you're away with people, you've got no technology. And we didn't know that 6 months later, you wouldn't ever be able to travel for the next 2.5 years.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Oh, he's still going to keep training. Don't worry. He's going to keep training. But,
The biggest training you can do is your mind. It's Kilimanjaro, and I think 99% of life is a mind game, right?
Yep. Overcomplication. You spoke about that a moment ago, and about how we all have a tendency to overcomplicate things. I wondered if you could just speak to that for a moment, because, again, I see that in a lot of the work that we do with our clients. We see a lot of business owners unnecessarily complicating their businesses, unnecessarily complicating their lives. And again, I think it's a fairly human condition, part of the human condition to an extent. Why is it that we overcomplicate, and how do we kind of get back to the essence of simplicity?
I think there's a couple of reasons of overcomplicating. One is that it becomes an easy way for us to say no to being who we want to be.
Yeah.
Someone asked me about when I was at this amazing event speaking last week, which flew us up to the venue on Chopper's, and someone came up to me after and said, I think we overcomplicate. What we loved about your talk is that it's just so simple, and they didn't mean to, they didn't mean that in an offensive way, but in a way of it really is being like, what makes me happy in life? What do I want to do in life? What, and how am I going to get that? And it's easy to go to look at all the reasons why we can't do it, or be overwhelmed by a mountain, whatever that mountain may be. But if you start just doing small steps towards it, and this is all stuff that people have been preaching and talking about forever. People have been talking about have a dream, have a goal, surround yourself with good people, take small steps. But every year I do 100+ conferences, and the brief is kind of all about those things. And what happens is we just need constant reminders that it is about what inspires you, what motivates you.
The principles that we've all heard over and over and over again are easy to ignore because we hear them over and over and again in some ways.
Yeah.
But we still need the reminder of them because those principles stand the test of time. And if we actually just follow those principles, then, chances are we're going to have a life that's rich and meaningful and rewarding in all the best possible ways. We still need that constant reminder.
So remember, for some people, tying their shoelace was, as a kid, it was the hardest thing to do. For me, there was a point where I thought I was going to be a Velcro for the rest of my life. Right? I was like, it's going to be impossible. And then we tie our shoelace and we go into school and we're starting to learn our times tables, or we're starting to learn how to construct sentences. And we're failing with 5 times 5, and then we get 5 times 5, and then we go and we graduate from primary school and high school and college, and then we start to have relationships, and those first relationships are really hard, or learning to drive a car is really hard, but we tell ourselves, imagine what my life would be like if I gave up learning to drive. Imagine what my life would be like if I didn't ask anyone else. Imagine what my life would be like if I'd never learned my times tables, right? And so what happens is as we get older, maybe our time frames push out, maybe the investment pushes out, maybe there's more processes to climb Kilimanjaro than what we asked to do with school athletics day. But effectively, it all comes down to a process. And if you can get that process by one, celebrating what you've achieved in life, never underestimate or take for granted what you've achieved in life. If you know what you roughly want to do or be, have those things. But what are the steps that you can do to get closer to there? So when I started speaking in America, and I did start speaking there before I was deciding to move there just before the pandemic, when do I want to be there? And gave myself a date. Okay, That's one thing I've done. Now I've got to buy my airline ticket. Now I've got to start contacting people I know who know people in the United States of America. Now I need to start looking at my speech and making sure that my speech is ready for America and how I articulate things. And all of a sudden, I'm 4 steps closer from just plugging in my computer to what I want to achieve in life.
Yeah, I think, again, that's the process, isn't it? And I just want to pick up on the comment, imagine if I never. And I think for the listeners to this show, because the people that listen to this podcast generally are dental practice owners, people who own a dental practice and they're looking to grow and scale their business. And sometimes I know that the journey is tricky and difficult and there's setbacks like everyone else. But I'm also aware that there's some people who give up on that, and I'd just like to kind of echo your words. Imagine if I'd never taken this opportunity, because the opportunity to grow and learn by owning a business is a huge self-development program as well. And I really like that phrase, man. I wrote it down here. Imagine if I never ... because I think it's really worthwhile considering. And yeah, going back to your point though, is imagine if you'd never set the goal to go to the United States, you wouldn't have taken those 4 steps, and you would never be on that journey now. And I think it's fantastic that you're going to be getting there.
And that goal towards the United States came through rejection. So not all the connection I have is straight away, but there's something beautiful in turning. In fact, I've been rejected heaps of times as well.
Yeah.
And there's something beautiful about turning rejection into affection. So when I contacted the Speaker Bureau here in New Zealand, they said, look, we will send you our newsletter. I've gone to them, hey, I'm going to be totally awesome. This is who I am. This is what I speak about. And they said, cool, here's our newsletter. And I was inside. I was like, I don't want to get your newsletter. I want to be in your newsletter, right?
Yeah.
I want to be in there. And but what I did is I had a choice here. I could fly out that newsletter and I could give up on my team and I could go, well, buggers, and I'm not going to do, I'm not going to do this, right?
Yep.
I'm going to see the rejection has been such a negative thing, if indeed it is even rejection, right? If indeed someone is even bullied, that's a whole other thing. And so, but I'm going to look and I'm going to see these people they represent. They represent people who are the best at what they do, whether it be sport, education, art, whatever it may be. So I looked at that and I go, how do I get competitive for these people? How do I get onto that platform? Well, imagine if I could be the speaker who is known as being a speaker for developing his dream of being a speaker, of being one of the best speakers in the country, and I've got pretty high expectations of what I want to do. And so that's when I decided to go to the United States of America. I was like, if I can speak in America, imagine what I'll be able to do in New Zealand.
Yeah, wow.
And that's exactly what happened. I had 2 big clients in America. I came back to that bureau. I said, look, this is who I was striking for in America. They were like, cool, Cam, and we've been following your journey as well. And yes, we'd love to represent you. And now, that's 12 years ago, they are the biggest part of my team. We go back and forth, we feed each other's pump, and we achieve incredible results.
That's fantastic. I love that. And I think you're right. Yeah, the dots don't always join up straight away. There's not always a linear process. And so, you go forth with faith. You take that first opportunity that comes back to what you said earlier. You keep focused on your dream. You say yes to the things you can, and then the dots eventually join up down the track. And I think that's a good lesson as well. Hey, Cam, I'm really mindful of the fact that you've been incredibly generous with your time, and I promised not to take advantage of that time, and I feel like I've done that a bit. But I could talk to you for days, mate. You're a really, really interesting talker.
Thank you.
If people wanted to find out more about engaging you as a speaker, is it best that they contact you directly? Is it best that people contact the Speakers Bureau? What's the best way for people to reach out to you so they can hear more about what you've got to say?
Yeah, very easiest way is just, and thanks for that opportunity, is just through my website, camcolkoen.com.
Camcolkoen.com.
Follow me on, social media, whatever that favorite social media is to you. And, I love just stepping into a room and seeing events as places for people to come together and give out information and resources and the stuff they need. And my job is just to bring perceptions on what is possible. We get people laughing, we get them crying. Sometimes we're laughing and crying at the same thing.
Well, I look forward to that.
But ultimately, people believing that they can achieve more. And it is just taking that time, as the listeners of this podcast, to just reflect on what you have achieved and not underestimate those things. I've had people say things like, Cam, I'll never achieve great things in life, yet they already have, but they've got so caught up on what's next, that they've underestimated what they've achieved and what they've already achieved. And that's an easy thing. One of the most popular questions I get is, Cam, what are you going to do next? And I like that. I like the direction. I like the dream of that. But I also want people to realise that there's great success that comes from stopping to smell the roses. And I think often, and especially as high achievers, we can forget that very vital piece of advice of stopping to smell the roses. And through doing that, we get reminded of, man, how scary was that when we started going to, in your case, dental school and setting up the practice and going from having 1 person to 2 people to 5 people to there's probably some people that have got enterprises of dental. And so it's just reflecting on that and going, yeah, what can I learn from it myself? Because as a speaker, that's what I'm constantly doing, is I'm constantly reflecting on my life and the journey around me in order to articulate something that's going to be inspirational to someone else. But we all have the ability to do that if we give ourselves that time.
That, I think, is possibly the most timely advice that I would offer our listeners today, because just as a bit of background, Cam, I ran a workshop last week for our clients, and at the end of that workshop, we had a secondary workshop for a subset of those clients, and every single one of those clients is a really high achiever. In fact, all of our clients are high achievers, but in this small group, there's people with massive enterprises, people doing, by any measure, very, very well, really well, and yet they are focusing on what's next. And for some people, not all, but for some people, that ability to look back and to celebrate the success they've already had, I think, is incredibly salient, because all the people that I know, and I'm sure people you hang around with as well, we often forget. We forget to give ourselves a pat on the back that things that we have achieved, and I think that focus on what's next can lead to, at least in my case, and I've certainly been guilty of this as well, is being grateful for the things we already have and the things we've already achieved. For me, brings a great source of happiness. And if I forget to do that, but always focused on what next, I always feel like my equilibrium is a little bit out of balance. And so I think for a happy Jesse, I need to look back a little bit as well. And I don't think I'm the only person to experience that, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, and look, that happiness at the end of the day can take the biggest weight of our shoulders.
Yeah.
In my business, there's a lot of stuff that I can focus on that makes me feel heavy. And when I do that, and if I do that, I don't perform to my optimum self. Yet if I go, I've been doing this now for 18, 19 years, I don't need to get so caught up on the day-to-day semantics anymore. I just need to focus on what do I want to feel? What do I want to give? How do I be my best self? And when I do that, not only do I perform to my best ability, I start to see my greatest opportunities.
Mate, I said 5 minutes ago that I was trying really hard not to take advantage of your time. I'm saying I'm starting to hold you through the conversation.
Maybe we can do a version 2 in a later stage. I'd like to do
mate,
that. You're a great interviewer, and I hope I haven't mumbled at times, but I asked that challenge at the beginning before we went online. I was like, if you can articulate stuff that's not been articulated in ways that others have in the past, I'm going to dig a bit deeper in what I can offer. And so a lot of what I've said today is the Cam Colkoen theme, but articulated in new ways. So I just hope that that's come across enjoyable to you guys as listeners.
It's been a wonderful experience for all of us, mate, and I want to say thank you. Really engaging. As I said a moment ago, I could talk to you for days. And I just want to say, from all of us here in Oz, to you over there in New Zealand, mate, and to all of our Kiwi listeners as well, I'd like to give you a great big thanks, mate, from all of us here at Savvy Dentist. And, mate, let's catch up soon. And I'm going to hold you to that number 2 episode, mate, because I think we've got a whole conversation that we can dig into. But
100%.
You're a good man, and I appreciate it, mate. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Savvy Dentist podcast. For more episodes, go to drjessegreen.com/savvydentist. And to discover how to build a high-performance dental practice, visit drjessegreen.com and download the free report.